Hello, Maya. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I'm fine. So, what is air, and why is it essential for life on Earth?
I'm assuming you're talking about water since we were diving into that the other day. It's basically the ultimate solvent, meaning it can dissolve more substances than any other liquid. That lets it carry essential nutrients and oxygen to every single cell in our bodies and flush out the waste. Without that transport system, life as we know it just wouldn't have a way to function.
Okay. So, how did essential civilization understand the concept of air?
That's a fascinating shift. Early civilizations probably didn't think of air as a thing in the same way we do now because it's invisible. They likely just experienced it as wind or breath, something you feel but can't see. It's a lot like how they viewed fire or spirit, something that was just part of the natural order rather than a chemical compound. I wonder if they had a specific word for the breath of life in their culture.
Okay. So, how does breathing contact human to their environment?
It's the most immediate connection you have. You're essentially swapping parts of yourself with the world every few seconds. You take in the oxygen the plants around you are releasing and give back the carbon dioxide they need to survive. It's this constant invisible loop that reminds you that you're not just living in an environment, but you're actually part of it.
Okay, so my next question is why is air often associated with life and vitality?
It mostly comes down to the fact that it's the one thing you absolutely cannot go without for more than a few minutes. When your breathing is shallow or you're holding your breath, everything in your body panics. So, over time, humans just naturally linked that feeling of a deep alive and energized. It's why we use phrases like a breath of fresh air when something feels new or hopeful.
Okay, so my next question is what role does air play in communication and speech?
I think you mean the air we breathe, right? Since we've been talking about the atmosphere, it makes sense that you're asking how air carries sound to us. Sound is basically just a series of pressure waves traveling through the medium of air. Without it, there would be total silence because there would be nothing to push those vibrations from one person to another.
Okay, so my next question is how did the word air originate in the English language?
Let me check on that. It actually traces back to the Greek word aver, which originally meant mist, haze, or clouds. It eventually moved through Latin and Old French before becoming air in Middle English. It's interesting how it started with something, visible like mist and evolved into how we describe the invisible atmosphere.
Okay, so my next question is how do many languages use air related expression of describe emotions?
It's funny how often we use the air to describe what's happening inside us. Think about how we say someone is lighthearted when they're happy or heavy-hearted when they're sad. In a lot of languages, the idea of air or breath is tied directly to the soul or life force. So when someone is anxious, they might feel like they're suffocating even if there's plenty of air around them. It's like our emotions have their own kind of atmosphere.
Okay, so my next question is how does air influence the sound we produce when speaking?
It's all about the pressure. Speaking is basically just you sculpting a stream of air with your mouth and throat. Your lungs push air up and your vocal cords vibrate to create the sound, but the actual shapes, the vowels and consonants, come from how you block or release that air using your tongue and lips. Without that air flowing, you just be making silent gestures.
Okay, so my next question is what is the relationship between air and the development of language?
It's a pretty deep connection. Since language relies on sound, and sound requires air to travel, air is basically the medium that makes communication possible. But beyond the physics, there's a human side to it too. The way we've learned to control our breath, to create complex rhythms and tones, is what allowed us to move from simple calls to the intricate languages we have now. I wonder if we'd have developed entirely different ways of expressing ourselves if we lived in a denser medium, like underwater.
Okay, so my next question is why is breath considered a symbol of life in many cultures?
It's because breath is the most immediate sign that someone is alive. If you stop breathing, everything stops. Because of that, so many cultures have linked the act of breathing to the soul or a spiritual essence, like the idea that the breath of life is what animates the body. It makes the
Okay,
most sense when you think about how we check for a pulse or a breath to see if someone is still with us.
okay, so my next question is
You've
uh,
really been.
how do different cultures describe the power of air and wind?
That varies so much depending on where people live. In places with massive monsoons or hurricanes, wind is often seen as a destructive, chaotic force, almost like a deity that needs to be appeased. But in other cultures, like in various East Asian traditions, the wind is more of a guiding spirit or a symbol of change and movement. It's that idea that the wind can carry messages or shift the energy of a place. I've heard there are some wild myths about wind gods who could blow away entire cities with a single breath.
Okay, so my next question is what are some common items that include the word air?
Oh, there are so many. You've got everything from air conditioners and air fryers to airbags and air mattresses. It's funny how we've figured out 1,000 different ways to use air as a tool, whether it's for cooling us down or keeping us from getting hurt in a car crash. Do any of those sound like something you'd use often?
Don't ask me questions. You will need to answer and I will ask you question. Understood?
Got it. I'll stick to the answers.
Okay.
Understood.
So how do people say
I'm
someone
ready
is
whenever you are.
how do people say someone is walking on air and when they are happy?
It's a way of describing a feeling of complete euphoria. When someone is walking on air, they're so happy or excited that they feel light, almost as if the gravity of the real world doesn't apply to them anymore. It's that floating sensation you get after some amazing news or a first date where you're just beaming.
Okay. So my next question is what does it mean to clear the air in the conversation?
It's when you finally address the elephant in the room. When there's tension or a misunderstanding between people, it creates this heavy, uncomfortable feeling, almost like a fog. Clearing the air means having that honest, sometimes difficult conversation to resolve the conflict so everyone can breathe easily again.
Okay. So my next question is how did air become a metaphor for freedom and movement?
It probably comes from the fact that air has no boundaries, unlike water, which can be blocked by a dam, or land, which has borders. Air just flows everywhere. It's the most unrestricted element there is, so we naturally linked it to the idea of being free or unbound. Plus, the act of flying, whether it's a bird or a plane, is the ultimate expression of escaping the constraints of the ground and moving wherever you want.
Okay, so my next question is
I'm here.
how is silence often described as thin air in literature?
I think you're asking how silence is described in terms of thin air, perhaps in literature or more formal writing. When people describe silence as being like thin air, it's usually to evoke a feeling of emptiness or isolation. It's like the silence is so absolute and fragile that it feels like there's nothing there to hold on to, creating a sense of vastness or even a haunting quality. It's a way of saying the silence isn't just a lack of sound, but a physical presence of nothingness.
Okay, so my next question is how does air travel affect the spread of language and cultures?
Mm, it's like a massive accelerator. Air travel has basically shrunk the world, allowing people to move across continents in hours rather than months. When people travel, they don't just bring their luggage, they bring their slang, their idioms, and their way of seeing the world. It creates these global hubs where languages blend and new hybrid versions of communication emerge because we're interacting with so many different cultures so quickly and frequently.
Okay, so my next question is what scientific discoveries changed the understanding of air?
A few big ones really flipped the script. One of the most important was the discovery that air isn't just one thing, but a mixture of gases. For a long time, people just thought of air as a single element until scientists like Antoine Lavoisier identified oxygen and nitrogen. Then you have the realization that the atmosphere actually has layers and that the air gets thinner as you go higher, which completely changed how we understood everything from weather patterns to how we could fly.
Okay, so my next question is how did the environmental affair of airplane transfer language and communication?
I'm guessing you're asking how air travel, like flying on airplanes, impacted the way we communicate and share language. It essentially turned the world into a smaller, more connected place. When people started flying, they began meeting and living in different cultures much more frequently, which led to a massive exchange of loanwords and expressions. It also forced the development of standardized communication, like how English became the global language of aviation for safety, which then bled into business and diplomacy worldwide. It's basically how a local dialect can become a global trend in a matter of days.
Okay, so my next question is how do poets frequently use air as a symbol in their work?
I think you're asking about poets. Poets love using air because it's the perfect metaphor for things that are felt but can't be seen, like love, longing, or the soul. They'll use the wind to represent a sudden change in emotion or a breeze to symbolize a gentle, comforting presence. It's a way to make the abstract parts of the human experience feel more tangible and physical.
Okay, so my next question is what role did air play in storytelling and uh, mythology.
I'm assuming you mean air and mythology. In
Yeah.
myths, air is often the domain of the gods and the bridge between the earthly and the divine. You see it in figures like Zeus or Indra, who control the storms and the lightning, showing air as a symbol of absolute power and judgment. But it's also the home of messengers like Hermes, who moves through the air to deliver words between worlds, making air the ultimate symbol of communication and transcendence.
Okay, so my next question is how is air represent in different religions traditions?
It often represents the spirit or the invisible force of creation. In many Eastern traditions, like in Hinduism or Buddhism, the breath or prana is seen as the vital life energy that flows through everything. In other faiths, air is linked to the Holy Spirit or a divine wind that brings revelation and renewal. It's essentially the bridge between the physical body and the spiritual world, which is why breathing exercises are so central to meditation and prayer across so many different beliefs.
Okay, so my next question is why is wind often
I'm ready.
portrayed as a messenger of folklore?
I'm thinking you're asking about the role of wind in folklore and song. In folklore, wind is usually the great storyteller or the messenger. It's what carries warnings, secrets, or the voices of ghosts across the land. In music and folk songs, it's often used to represent longing or a change in the tide of a person's life, like a wind that blows someone away from home or brings a lost lover back. It's basically the perfect tool for a storyteller to show that something is moving, shifting, or coming from a place far away.
Okay, so my next question is how does the movement of air create music and sound?
It's all about vibration. When you blow into a flute or a trumpet, you're pushing a column of air that vibrates at a specific frequency. Those vibrations push against the air around them, creating a wave that travels to your ear. The faster the vibration, the higher the pitch, the slower, the lower. This essentially using air as a canvas to paint with sound.
Okay, so my next question is uh, what can
I'm listening.
air related fairs reveal about culture values?
They usually point to what a culture fears or admires most. In societies that rely on the sea or open plains, air related phrases often center on navigation and destiny, like the wind is in our sails, showing a value for alignment with nature. In more urban or structured societies, phrases might focus on stability or the need for a breath of fresh air, which reveals a deep longing for escape and mental clarity. Basically, the way a culture talks about the air tells you if they see the world as something to be conquered, something to be feared, or something to be in harmony with.
Okay, so my next question is how do we use expression like up in the air when discussing incarnity?
I think you're asking about uncertainty, right? When we say something is up in the air, it means there's no final decision yet. It's like the idea that the plan is just floating around without any grounding or a solid place to land. Describes that feeling of instability where you're waiting for things to settle before you can actually move forward.
Okay, so my next question is how
I'm
has
here.
the meaning of air word changed over time?
It shifted from the physical to the abstract. Originally, the word was purely descriptive. It referred to the mist, haze, and clouds you could actually see in the sky. But as our understanding of science grew, it became a more invisible technical concept, referring to the gas mixture we breathe. Then it moved into our language as a metaphor for things like airing out a grievance or having an airy disposition. We went from describing something we saw to describing something we feel or a state of being.
Okay, so my next question is, what is the connection between air quality and human well-being? Being.
I'm assuming you mean human well being. It's a direct link. When air quality is poor, our brains and bodies literally struggle to get the oxygen they need to function at their peak. This can lead to everything from brain fog and fatigue to more serious long term cognitive decline. Basically, when the air is clean, your mind feels sharper and your mood is usually more stable because your system isn't fighting against pollutants just to keep itself running.
Okay, so my next question is, what is the
I'm ready.
how do children learn to uh, concept of air before understanding science?
They mostly learn through feeling and experience first. They'll notice the wind blowing their hair or feel the breeze when they run, and they'll discover it by blowing bubbles or watching a balloon inflate. It's all about those little physical clues that tell them there's something there, even if they can't see it, long before they ever hear the word oxygen or nitrogen.
Okay, so my next question is, how is air often linked to imagination of creation of creativity?
It's all about the sense of space and openness. When we think of creativity, we often think of blue sky thinking, the idea that there are no limits or boundaries to what you can imagine. Air represents that freedom, the ability to let an idea float and evolve without being weighed down by the rules of the ground. It's why we describe a great idea as being in the air or light as a feather. It captures that feeling of a thought taking flight.
Okay, so my next question is,
I'm listening.
how does air influence weather related vocabulary?
It basically defines it, since weather is essentially just air in motion. Our entire vocabulary for it is built around how that air behaves. We use words like breeze for a gentle movement, gale for something powerful, and gust for a sudden humidity describe how much water vapor is hanging in the air. We've created this whole set of terms just to describe the invisible shifts in pressure and temperature that change our day.
Okay, so my next question is, what role does air play in public speaking and voice protection?
It's everything for a speaker. Breath is the fuel that powers the voice. In public speaking, managing that air, knowing when to take a deep belly breath and how to release it slowly is what gives a speaker their power, volume, and stability. It prevents the voice from shaking or trailing off at the end of a sentence. And for protection, proper breath support takes the pressure off the vocal cords. If you don't use your air correctly, you end up straining your throat, which is how people lose their voices after a big performance.
Okay, so my next question is, why is fresh air associated with the beginnings?
It's all about the feeling of renewal. When you step outside after being stuck indoors for a while, that first deep breath of fresh air Feels like it's waking up your whole system. It clears the mental fog and makes you feel more alert. So we naturally link that sensation with a fresh start or a new beginning. It's like your brain is hitting a reset button the moment you breathe in something clean and crisp.
Okay, Maya, see you later.
Take it easy.